The New York Times had an interesting article over the last couple of days, I think it was over the weekend, about how there's this magic $75,000 number. This was first reported in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, that people who had an income under $75,000 a year, as they got more money, as they got more income, or household incomes anyway, family incomes, that they got happier is not quite the word, but life satisfaction improved. Above $75,000, it didn't improve. It ceased to improve. Because basically, in most parts of the country, you can live your life on that amount of money. And one of the things that's particularly fascinating that wasn't mentioned in this article, but the numbers are out there, it's easy enough to find, is that from the founding of the Republic in the George Washington administration until the Ronald Reagan administration, as worker productivity went up, so too did worker wages, until 1980. In 1980, productivity continued to increase, but worker wages leveled off to where right now the median family household income is around $46,000 a year. But productivity has gone up dramatically, and had that productivity, had those wages continued to track productivity as they did before Reagan, right now the average family in the United States would be making around $75,000 a year, which, by coincidence, is what it takes to be satisfied, to have a happy life, which I think a lot of people who are old enough to remember growing up or living in the 40s, 50s, 60s, or 70s would say, yeah, that's how things were back then before Reaganomics. Tanya Marchiol is with us. She's a conservative commentator, president of Team Investments, Inc., teaminvestmentsinc.com. Tanya, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me. I love your spin on everything. It's so fun to come on this show.
Well, thank you. I mean, this is not so much spin. It's pretty straightforward stuff. Similarly, had the minimum wage been adjusted simply for inflation, the 1968 minimum wage right now would be $10.20. So
let's wait. Let's talk about Reaganomics real fast before we go anywhere else. There were 4 things that Reaganomics did. They were, 1, reduce the growth of government spending.
Nonsense. Government spending exploded under Ronald Reagan.
Government spending went from 4% to 2.5%. The second thing it did, I'm going to give you your turn. I want to go through the 4 things real fast. The second thing was reduce marginal tax rates. For an individual, they went from 70% to 35%.
For a millionaire.
For a corporation, they went from 43% to 34%. The third thing was reduce regulation. Obviously, he did that, which Obama wants to do more of.
Please name one regulation that Reagan did away with.
Reduce inflation, which the inflation rate declined from 10% to 4.2%.
And Reagan had nothing to do with that.
Anyone in their right mind would say Reaganomics did it.
Okay, number 4 was Paul Volcker, and that started under the Carter administration. They wrung the inflation out by jacking the interest rates up. Reagan presided over the largest increase, and Republicans will tell you this. I mean, you had Rick Perry talking about this and Newt Gingrich talking about this on the campaign trail. Ronald Reagan saw the biggest increase in the size of government in the history of the United States. He also tripled our national debt. Ronald Reagan in 8 years borrowed more money than every president from George Washington to Jimmy Carter combined. He left us with the biggest debt in the history of the world.
Reagan did more for our economy than any president ever has.
You're hallucinating, Tanya.
He never once blamed Carter, unlike our president today, who continues to blame everyone before him. You know what? If our president was a leader, and I've said it before, all we really want is a leader. Someone to come in and say, you know what, Republicans, you have a good point here. And you know what, Democrats, you have a good point here. Let me be the leader that you elected me to be, and let me find the medium that works for our entire nation, instead of it has to be my way, and you guys are totally wrong.
Okay, so you're saying that if the president was a real leader, he would find the areas where he and the Republicans agree, at the very least, and say, let's do those things?
He would find a way to make this economy and our United States.
Okay, well, here's an example, I think, of what you're describing. Play this, Shana.
The Republicans say they don't want to raise taxes on the middle class. I don't want to raise taxes on the middle class. So we should all agree to extend the tax cuts for the middle class. Let's agree to do what we agree on.
Now, that sounds like leadership to me.
Great segue for
why are the
really
Republicans saying,
about?
no way? But Tanya, you never answered my original setup question, which is that we have a billionaire problem in the United States.
What he considers to be the middle class is a joke. He wants to raise taxes on the wealthy. Are you kidding me? We will never get out of this situation by continuing to rape the wealthy and give to the poor. Why don't we educate our poor
Tanya,
on how they can come
let
up?
me ask you a really
Because,
simple
Tom,
question.
Wait, no, Tom, I
just
want to
a
give you
really
a
simple
example.
question. I got it. You don't want to raise taxes on people who make more than $250,000. I got it. Why is it? Why is it that during the Dwight Eisenhower Republican administration, during the Jack Kennedy Democratic administration, Lyndon Johnson Democratic administration, Richard Nixon Republican administration, during the Jerry Ford Republican administration, during those administrations, we saw the fastest growth in the history of the United States. Every one of the decades of the 50s, 60s, and 70s, those 3 decades, every single one growth was over 3.1% of GDP. The only time in the history of the United States, before or after, and the top marginal tax rate during those presidencies was 91%. Now, then Ronald Reagan came along. You got your tax cuts. We've had 30 years of tax cuts for millionaires and billionaires, and it doesn't look to me like it's turned out so well.
So now we're going to overtax the wealthy to give to the poor. Going back to my point, and what I want to say is, why don't we educate those who don't understand what a work ethic is? Tom, let me tell you this. I remember sitting on
Tanya,
the floor.
that's the most god-awful, insulting thing I've ever heard.
Let me make my point. I remember sitting on the floor with my mother and counting pennies to go to the grocery store. I collected pennies as a child, and my mother came to me and asked me if we could count out pennies for groceries that week, and I said yes, and it's one of the best memories of my life. But you know what? I am no longer counting pennies. I'm working 16 hours a day to make sure that I pay my mortgage, to make sure that I have money to go to do the things that I want to do, and I do a ton of charity work. And yet you want to tax me more because I work hard?
You make more than $250,000 a year, Tanya?
This society was created on.
Tanya, I salute you. Do you make more than $250,000 a year?
I do.
Okay, then I want to tax you more. I think that if you're making more than $250,000 a year,
I wake up. You know what, Tom?
And you're only paying 35%.
Tom, I go to bed every night.
Tanya, you have to let me finish a sentence once in a while too.
Okay, go ahead.
If you're making over $250,000 a year and you're only paying 35% income tax, let's take it back to where it was under Bill Clinton, 39%, and only on the first dollar after $250,000. Your first $250,000 is going to be untouched. If you're really trying to tell me and our listeners and viewers that you're having a hard time living on that first $250,000, which is not going to be touched by Obama's proposal, I got a bridge to sell you.
And here is my argument. Instead of continuing to have the gap be greater, why can't we educate those that don't understand how to work? I work hard every single day. You know what, Tom? You work hard every day. We go to work every single day. I work 16-hour days. How come we can't educate? Do you know right now I'm hiring and I can't find good help? Why is that? Because it is better. It is
because Ronald Reagan started deconstructing our schools.
They make more money off the government than they do coming to work 8 hours a day.
Tanya, I'm guessing you're not old enough to remember that our schools back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s were the envy of the world. World. We produced world-class engineers. And then Ronald Reagan came in, put Bill Bennett in charge of the Department of Education. The Republican Party started deconstructing schools all over this country, and now we have a disaster. I mean, that if you want to know why you can't find good employees, the fact of the matter is that I've never found any problem hiring good employees. We put an ad in the paper looking for one person. We'll get 100 applicants.
I definitely want you to come hire for me.
Yeah,
but
back to my question, this very simple, straightforward question: If workers' wages had simply kept track with, we're out of time. Tanya, I will leave you with the last word. I'm not even going to finish that sentence.
I enjoyed it.
Tanya Marchiol, thank you for being with us. Teaminvestmentsinc.com is the website, and appreciate your being with us today. 15 minutes past the hour. We'll be back.